What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Tait Talk Sports Podcast. Back with another NFL edition. A little overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to go over my Week 6 picks, see how I did there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Tennessee Titans, discuss Tua Tagovailoa being named as the Dolphins starter, and then, of course, go over my Week 7 predictions. So first things first, Week 6 review. I went 9-4 on my picks, a lot better than I actually thought I did. A lot of surprises. One game that stuck out to me: Packers versus Bucks. I think not a lot of people saw that coming. Almost a beatdown, I want to say, of the Packers. It started slow for the Bucks, but Brady and that defense just flipped the switch, and it seemed like Rodgers was getting sacked every other play. Gronk finally started playing. Tom Brady and Gronk just clicked. It was like they were back in New England. It was really pretty amazing to watch, and I hope the Bucks stay that way. Obviously, you want the Packers to improve, but had the Packers in that game and obviously was wrong. Another game was Rams versus 49ers. Bit of a surprising one to me to see the Rams lose to that team. I think Goff just wasn't quite on his game, and it just wasn't a good performance from the Rams. And on the other side, it was a great performance from the Niners. Although Mostert coming out of it hurt the running back. It's that we'll see what kind of impact that has, because they're not the deepest at running back, but receivers are starting to play really well with Debo playing again. It was just an interesting game. Obviously, I had Rams, so I was wrong on that one. But anyway, we move on. Next up, the Tennessee Titans. I think they're an interesting team. I think the one thing that you hear everyone say about them is they know their identity, and that is true to the fullest degree. They know who they are. They know they're going to run the ball, whether they are running it into a brick wall or running it through a Mack truck-sized hole. They're going to run the ball. And it's an interesting strategy, and you'd think in this day and age with the running with the West Coast style offenses that it wouldn't quite work, but hey, they're undefeated, they're dominating. I'm not a huge fan of that system. I didn't think it would work well, but hey, it's working real well. But my question for them is, what happens when the run gets stuffed? Obviously, Tannehill has played excellent this year. Some even saying he's an MVP candidate. But I think what happens when the run gets real stuffed, and I think that's a really good test this weekend for the Steelers going against the Steelers, which I'll talk a bit more about later. But what happens when they really aren't getting those big pops in the run, even late in the game? Is Tennessee going to be able to stand? Is Tannehill going to be able to stand in the pocket and deliver when the defense knows that he's going to pass? I think they do so well at taking advantage of the play action pass that's where Tannehill gets his numbers. I think it'll be interesting what happens when it gets stuffed. But if it doesn't get stuffed, hey, more power to him. It's going to be tough for anyone to stop him. Next up, Tua Tagovailoa this week was named the starter for the Miami Dolphins after their bye week, because this week they are on a bye. But nevertheless, I really wanted to talk about this. I think it's frankly, from a fan's perspective, it's pretty awesome getting to see Tua start this early. But first things first is Fitzpatrick being named to the bench. He obviously was very struck by the news, because I'm not sure, not a lot of people knew this, but the news was leaked. Brian Flores, the coach, had not said anything publicly or even to the team yet. Someone on the inside let that information out, and you better believe Flores was not happy about it, but someone let the information out. And so Fitzpatrick kind of found out, not even from his coaching staff, and was heartbroken. And you can respect that. I mean, he thought the team was his, and it just kind of got stripped from him when he was playing well, by all means. And it sucks for him, and I do feel, but you just got to look at it from a franchise perspective and from Tua's career perspective. If he's ready, if he's checked all those boxes, if he's leading in camp and doing and healthy and looks good, then I think why not start him this early? Who knows what the offseason for next season is going to be like, or anything. He didn't have an offseason this year, didn't have a preseason. So I think it's really important to start him as early as you can, and get those snaps, get that experience. I think it's going to be bust or boom for Tua. He's either going to come out here and he's going to look special, and he'll probably still throw a few picks, but he leads this team to a few more wins. They win some games that maybe they shouldn't, and who knows, then they're in the playoff picture. Or more usual for a rookie quarterback. He starts throwing some picks, makes some mistakes, and the team kind of settles out, doesn't really make the playoffs, and they get a good draft pick again. But I think either way, this is good for Tua. It's really the right decision for his career. He's going to get some experience. I love it. We're going to get some good matchups later in the year. We're going to have Tua versus Burrow. What a great matchup. All right, next up, I'm going to talk about my week 7 predictions. First game is Giants versus Eagles on Thursday Night Football, as the day I'm recording this. This is an interesting matchup. Giants, not a great team, looked okay last week. Eagles actually looked really good last week, especially Wentz. He was making some good plays. Obviously did not win, but they put up a bigger fight than I definitely thought they would. I think this is a pretty easy decision. I'm going to go with the Eagles in this game. Giants are just still they're just not there yet. They've got some pieces that they're not really coming together. I think give them a year before they really start putting up a real fight, but I'm going to take the Eagles. Next game, we got Panthers versus the Saints. I think I'm going to take Saints in this one just because the Panthers, although they started making on a run, obviously didn't do too great last week. I just think the Saints are kind of starting to find their stride, specifically Drew Brees is starting to find his stride. I think it almost was in his head those first couple of weeks that when people were saying he couldn't go deep. Last week he went not necessarily deep, but he definitely went more than 20 yards a few times. And I think they're starting to find their rhythm. Michael Thomas could even play this week, and if he comes back, that's just even more. Drew Brees gets his number 1 target finally back since week 1. So yeah, in that matchup, I'm going to take the Saints. Next game, we got Bills versus the Jets. I'm expecting a beatdown. It's the Jets. They got shut out last week for the first time since like 1980 or something. And they're just not a good team. I don't know why they're holding on to Adam Gase. Maybe they know he's going to lose them games and that'll get them the number 1 pick, but it's just not a good look. The people no one likes him and they're losing, and there's even these ideas floating around that they with the number 1 pick that like whoever they pick will not even want to go there. Trevor Lawrence should stay in college an extra year, which I think is ridiculous, but it's feasible. But the Bills, lost last week, obviously aren't happy about it and want to prove themselves that they're not going to decline after looking so good early. They're going to come out here, and I'm expecting a pretty significant blowout. So I'm going to take the Bills in that one. Next game, we got Browns versus Bengals. This is a cool matchup with Joe Burrow. I think it's interesting because Browns obviously did not look great last week, and Mayfield got pulled in the 4th quarter for Case Keenum. I don't know if that was totally on his play. I think it might have been partly due to injuries. I know he was a bit banged up going in and got hit a lot in the game, so maybe it was a mix of both. But the quarterback play, especially since Nick Chubb has gone out, has not looked great. The running game is not exactly the same. And that O-line last week got ate alive. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens against this Bengals team. I do think that the Browns win this one, though, because that Bengals O-line is just so bad, and Myles Garrett alone could sack Burrow against that O-line. So I just think the Browns defensive line is going to do so much to get in Burrow's face that he's not going to be able to score enough points. And I think the Browns are going to be able to sneak in the end zone a few times. I think it might be a lower scoring game, but I'm going to take the Browns. Next game, we got Cowboys versus Washington. Cowboys coming off a bad week last week, did not win. And this week has been a bad week for the office and the players, really just Mike McCarthy, just the Cowboys team as a whole, with some players coming out anonymously saying that they're not learning anything from the coaches, and the coaches seem to have no idea what they're doing. And then Mike McCarthy coming back and saying he's over teaching them. It's just a real nightmare. It seems like the players aren't on board with the McCarthy way. Who knows how long he lasts there, but they are going up against the Washington football team, which, despite having flashes of goodness, and Chase Young is just a dominant force already, I just don't think they have enough. McLaurin on offense is basically almost their only weapon. Antonio Gibson at running back is decent, but Kyle Allen's at quarterback, and they don't really have too many studs on defense besides Chase Young and maybe Ryan Kerrigan, with Matt Ioannidis being injured for the year. I just think the Cowboys, despite being weak and that defense weak and only having Andy Dalton, I think they will prevail in this game. At the end of the day, they still have Amari Cooper. They still have Zeke. They still have DeMarcus Lawrence. Leighton Vander Esch is playing. I think they're just a better football team than Washington is. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Cowboys. Next game is an interesting one, Packers versus Texans. Both teams coming off weeks where, especially the Texans, probably feel they should have won. Texans obviously taking the Titans to overtime, but they got ran on a lot. But that seems to happen with everybody who plays the Titans, so I'm not going to hold that too much against them. But the Packers coming off a devastating loss to Tampa, I think both teams want to prove something. But I feel that the Texans, they've got a new coach. They're looking pretty good, but I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to be mad. He's going to be mad he got sacked so much. That offensive line is going to be mad they gave up so many sacks. I just think they're going to come in there with a bit more fire than the Texans are. And so for that reason, I'm going to take the Packers. Next game, we got Lions versus Falcons. This is a really interesting one. Falcons obviously last week coming out and just firing. I mean, I did not see it coming. Usually when the coach is gone, you take the team that has a new coach. But I thought that it would take them at least a few weeks to get things going. But right off the bat, a touchdown from Julio on his first touch. I believe it was something like in his last 140 targets, he had 2 touchdowns total. And in this game, he had something like 14 targets and 2 touchdowns. So for some reason, getting rid of Dan Quinn made Julio catch touchdowns, which, if that's the result, then great. But I mean, they were just on fire offensively. And then all of a sudden that defense that had looked awful and unmotivated came out there and got picks against a good Vikings team. They haven't been great this year, but they haven't been that bad. And that defense showed up, I was really impressed. The Lions, not an amazing week, but I think they're a bit too weak in key areas. They don't quite have an offensive line. That defense is pretty much all around weak. They don't really have too many stars there. They've got Okudah, who's a young corner, who will hopefully turn out. But as of right now, he's just a young corner. And so I think that team is too weak. I think the Falcons have found, at least look like they've found their stride on offense. That defense is dynamic. I just think they might start get a few wins here. It's a bit too late for them to maybe make a real hard hard playoff push, but who knows? But I'm going to take Falcons. Next game is probably arguably the game of the week. It's Steelers versus Titans. Obviously, I mentioned a little bit about this earlier, but this is a really interesting matchup. It's almost the immovable object meets the unstoppable force. And that unstoppable force is the Derrick Henry run game, and the immovable object is the Steelers D-line. But I mean, I think you almost can't argue against that. They are the best defensive line in football. They just got Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Stephon Tuitt, Bud Dupree. They are just stacked. Even at the outside linebacker positions, they are stacked. And that offense has been humming. Big Ben's got a new elbow. He's throwing dots. He's hitting the guys in the end zone. Chase Claypool is a monster on offense. I just think they are such a good team. To me, they are the number 1 team in the NFL right now. For some reason, they're going under the radar a little bit. I know Bleacher Report had them number 1. But on the other hand, the Titans are also obviously a great team, and that run game has yet to be stopped. We've seen games where it gets bottled in the beginning, but eventually it breaks through, and Derrick Henry breaks off a 50-yard run like we saw against the Texans. But I don't know if that's going to happen in this game. I think usually what you think of is as the game goes on, the running back starts to damage the D-line, and the D-line gets tired, and it gives the running back space. I feel like it's the opposite for the Steelers defense, especially with TJ Watt on there with so much energy. I feel like as the game goes on, they get stronger, and the running back starts feeling the pain. I think they're a great team. I saw that Stephen A had Titans the number 1 team in the NFL, and I can't get on board with that. They are a great team, definitely top 5, but I cannot stand by and get them put number 1 over someone like the Steelers, the Chiefs, or even the Seahawks. So to me, in this game, I'm going to take the Steelers. I think that defense takes over. They stop the run, and we see that the Titans really need the run in order to pass. So I'm going to take the Steelers. Next game, we got Bears versus Rams. This is an interesting one. Rams coming off a disappointing loss. They're going to want to win. I think they're going to be fired up to win. It depends on if Jared Goff can play well. The Bears looked good. Their defense played well. But I do think the Rams are an overall better football team. I think the Bears are still, despite having such a good record, I still can't get on board. I think Foles is just too shaky as a starter, but who knows what'll happen here. But in this game, I do think that the Rams just kind of take over both on offense and on defense. And I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I don't think it'll be too close. So I'm going to take the Rams. Next game, we got Chiefs versus Broncos. Broncos coming off an impressive win against the Patriots. I think this is an interesting one. The Chiefs obviously looked good last week, but they did something a bit different. They ran the ball a lot without even having Le'Veon Bell in the lineup. And this week, I believe they will have Le'Veon Bell, maybe only partly, but he should be on the team. But I do think the Chiefs, now that they've discovered that they can run the ball and not just force it to only go to Patrick Mahomes, I think they're going to use that a bit more. I think the Broncos are an okay team, but I just think they're a bit young right now. They don't have Von Miller, but that defensive line is still great. I can only imagine what they would have been if they had Von Miller. But I think Drew Lock still a bit young for back-to-back picks in the game against the Patriots, and they still won. I just think there's too many holes in that Broncos team, and this Chiefs team, arguably the best team in the NFL. I just think they're going to handle them pretty well. I'm going to take the Chiefs. Next game, we got Jaguars versus Chargers. This is a good matchup. Chargers, obviously, Justin Herbert is looking real good. I mean, he's got a rocket for an arm, and he's good. He's good at escaping. He's strong. I think he's one of the better prospects playing this year, especially the fact that he's been given a good team around him. Obviously, someone like Joe Burrow doesn't have an offensive line, doesn't really have a defense. He's got receivers, but otherwise a lot of holes. Whereas Herbert, he's got that defense behind him that is great with Bosa. And obviously it's hurt, but it's still one of the better defenses in the NFL. And he's got a decent offensive line that can somewhat protect him. And he's got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, the deep threat. I just think he's got a lot of pieces around him that have made him so successful versus the Jaguars, who, despite looking good early, I think are just going to kind of ride this season out, probably get another win or two here and there. But I just think they're probably going to almost want to lose to get a big draft pick. But I do like them. I think they're better than people give them credit for, but I think this matchup goes to the Chargers. Next game, we got 49ers versus the Patriots. This is a good matchup. Both teams coming off surprising weeks, but in opposite ways. 49ers beating the Rams, which I think was a surprise, at least to me. And then the Patriots losing to the Broncos, which was a surprise to me. But I think that people kind of started to give Cam a little bit of dirt for that game, but it was definitely not Cam's fault. I was watching the game, or at least watched highlights from the game, and he was throwing it downfield. He had a bad interception, but he was doing good. I think it was more the offensive line's fault than anything, because you think of Cam and you might think he's obviously mobile, he can run, but he is not Lamar Jackson or Russell Wilson, where the pocket starts to break down and they stop what they're doing. They don't really look downfield and they get out of the pocket and then they look downfield again. But when you watch Cam Newton, that's not who he is. He snaps the ball and he stands tall in the pocket. And he doesn't really look to roll out as much. He's definitely a more of a designed run guy. And if the pocket breaks down, but there's a hole in the middle, then he can run up the middle. But he's not a big rollout guy, not a huge throw on the run. He's kind of an interesting mix of statue and mobile. But I think going against the 49ers with a beat up D line, I think he's going to have more time. I think the run game is going to be able to go a little bit better in this one. And I think the 49ers just lost Mostert. Despite coming off a good win, I still don't think they're that strong of a team. And I think the Patriots find their way again. I'm going to take the Patriots. Next game, we got Bucks versus the Raiders. Two interesting teams. Raiders obviously starting hot versus the Bucks, who started a bit cold, but now are getting hot. I think this could be a really good matchup. Raiders have surprised a lot of people this year. They surprised the Saints. They surprised the Chiefs. Obviously, that was a surprise last week. I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch. I do think it'll probably be a shootout somewhat, but it's either going to be a shootout or I think the Bucks win. pretty handily because that defense looked amazing last week, especially the D line. And obviously Tom Brady and Gronk found their connection. Gronk had a touchdown, almost could have had two. I think they've found their rhythm, and if they get Chris Godwin back fully healthy, I think that offense is going to be so hard to stop. And if that defense can play like they are, they're definitely a top 10 team in the NFL. I think the Bucs take this game pretty easily, so I'm going to take the Bucs. Last game, a game that just today got moved to Sunday Night Football, actually over the Bucs versus Raiders, is Seahawks versus Cardinals. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. Obviously, Russell Wilson and versus the guy everyone compares to Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. I mean, that was his draft comp: short, small hands, but speedy, and they are very similar to each other. I think Kyler Murray is definitely a bit faster and maybe has a bit more of an arm, but I think it's going to be real fun to watch. Two teams that are dynamic on offense, but have defenses with holes all over the place. I think this one's going to be a high scoring game. I think it's going to be a close one, but you know what happens when you're in a close one versus Russell Wilson? He takes it down. I mean, last week against the Vikings, or not last week because they were on a bye, but 2 weeks ago against the Vikings, I thought it was over. And even I, as a Seahawks fan, thought it was over. Russell Wilson came back and won the game. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be close. And in close games, Russell Wilson does not lose. So in this game, I'm going to take the Seahawks. All right. Thank you guys for watching. That's been my video. Obviously, I'm going to make another one next week. Look back at how I did on this week and make my week 8 predictions. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.